the focus on mental health and physical health and kind of like spiritual health, I think has been a good thing because we've stopped pretending to be superheroes and we've started pretending to be real. We've started to be vulnerable. I onboard people and I tell them about using sick time for mental health days, and I tell them about the time I took one.
What's up, captains? So every year around this time, I get a bunch of people reaching out to me asking, Taylor, what can I do to not get so hungover? Or how can I have my alcohol in the healthiest way possible? And I'm excited to announce that I've finally pieced together my alcohol optimization and hangover remedy strategies all in one place. All right. So this is a roughly 20-minute video, as well as PDF that you can download with links to everything that I mentioned on everything that I do personally to help me optimize my alcohol consumption to still be as healthy as possible when choosing to drink, and then still wake up the next day able to be productive and alert without any of that brain fog or headaches that you get from regular drinking. And this has personally been a game changer for me. I used to be a heavy drinker, as you may know, back in the Marine Corps. I was borderline alcoholic. And back then I struggled with sleep. I was stressed out. I would get hungover, like headaches every weekend. And that was no way to live. And so obviously since then I've cut my drinking back, but on occasion, I still like to drink. I actually drank last night. I'm recording this the day after Thanksgiving. And you can see here, I'm clear, I'm talking, I'm no brain fog. It's because I implement these strategies that allow me to optimize myself the day after drinking. And I'm giving them to you guys. So for less than the cost of one drink, so only $7, you can get all of my alcohol optimization strategies. Again, it's in video format. It's about 20 minutes with a downloadable PDF to links to everything that I mentioned. And the link is going to be in the show notes to get this. I don't know why you wouldn't. Again, less than the cost of one drink. We got Christmas coming up. We've got New Year's coming up. That's a big one. But really, for any day that you just want to have a few drinks and then still wake up feeling good, this is for you. So again, the link is in the show notes of this podcast. And if you choose a drink, happy drinking. Hello, and welcome aboard another episode of the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your captain speaking, or this is your captain speaking. There we go. Taylor Morgan. Before we dive into today's interview, I want to remind you guys that this podcast is brought to you by the Captain's Lifestyle Program, my signature 90-day holistic lifestyle optimization program specifically designed for impact-driven entrepreneurs. So if you want to look good, feel good, and perform at your best so you can grow your impact, head over to thecaptainslifestyle.com and see what we're all about. Now on to today's show with Nathan Stuck. Nathan is a firm believer in using business as a force for good and has cemented himself as a leader in the B Corp community. In addition to serving as a director of culture and strategic impact at Ad Victoriam Solutions, Nathan also teaches a B Corp class in the University of Georgia's MBA program, owns his own B Corp consulting business, and founded and chairs the nonprofit Be Local Georgia. In 2020, he was awarded the Community Builder Award by B Lab US and Canada, and he is dedicated to helping people and businesses make a positive change in the world while balancing profits and purpose. Nathan, welcome to the show.
I thought you were going to say welcome aboard.
That's only when I have clients sign on to my program, then they get the welcome aboard.
Well, it's funny too.
Special.
I'm sitting here and I was like, man, you know what I should have worn is I just recently got married and I had for the bachelor party, I wore a captain's hat. Somebody got me. So I was
Perfect.
like, wrong day to not wear the captain's hat. So, but yeah, thanks for having me. I'm always excited to come on, talk B Corps and just kind of starting, it's a journey. It's a journey from zero to that never really stops. So I think people forget that, if you're going to go 500 miles, you have to go the first mile and the second mile and the third mile. So,
yep. So let's start with some clarification because I heard you just say B Corps and I've always said B Corp. So clarify for everybody out there, which one is it?
This is like the old, like tomato. Cause it's funny because I work with a guy that we've done a lot of B Corp stuff together and he calls them B Corps. It drives me nuts. I think I drive him nuts because I say B Corp. I think, and then anybody who's ever been military calls them B Corps because they just seem like Marine Corps.
Yep.
don't really know. I just say B Corp because technically it's short for corporation.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So whatever, potato, potato.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, and that's where I was coming from because I'm a former Marine. So anytime I see that word, it's just core, and it bugs me when people say corpse. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not a dead body. Like, so
now I'm going to think about it differently. So we'll see.
Yeah. So glad we got that clarification out of the way. And let's keep it going. So for anybody who isn't familiar with B Corp, explain what all of this is, this whole certification process and what it stands for.
Yeah. I mean, it honestly started out of the guys that started were the same guys that, I'm in my late 30s. So I remember And One mixtapes and the And One basketball shorts. It was the guys who started And One, and when they sold the company, they didn't have anything in their bylaws about stakeholder governance, and I always forget the legal term, but if you get an offer, you have to do what's in the best interest of your shareholders. And they got an offer, they had to sell because they weren't majority shareholders. So when the shareholders vote, that's it. So they had a really cool company. I mean, they had factories overseas where they were paying American living wages. Their employees here had top of line benefits, and they found a way to make it work, without also having to then charge $400 for a pair of shoes. And literally overnight after they sold that company, they just watched it get ripped apart. So, and their baby was just kind of gone, and everything that they had built and everything that, they had promised employees and taking care of their people like family, it just all went away. So they decided they would start something. They didn't know what, but let's figure out a way to help other entrepreneurs, when they do want to exit, because that is a lot of why you start a business. It's scale, and eventually your exit strategy is, but how do you grow something that's uniquely you, and when you exit, not lose that? So they came up with this certification, which was so they started the nonprofit B Lab, which then oversees the certification for B Corp. So as companies, you have to go through an assessment, and it's a 200-point assessment. You have to get 80, which sounds like a failing grade for anybody that's halfway decent at math. That's a 40 out of 100. So, but you have to get to 80, and it's fairly difficult to get to. And then B Lab, the nonprofit, the parent, comes in and then basically assigns an auditor. They go through and they're looking at, everything. There's 5 different sections of the assessment: workers, governance, community, environment, and customers. So they're looking at do you have a data privacy policy? What's your pay multiplier from, top to bottom? What's your, what kind of benefits do you offer? What's, how diverse is your workforce? What community programs are you doing? What percentage of revenue did you donate in time or product? So you basically go through this and you're assessing your company. And then ultimately, if you get through that audit with a score greater than 80, you're a certified B Corp. So high barrier to entry. That's why I always call it kind of the gold standard of corporate social responsibility, because there's so much out there now where, even on products, there's just make believe things on products now that don't mean anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So from my understanding, to basically sum that all up, and you tell me if this is correct, I've always thought of a B Corp as basically the highest standard of business. If they have that certification, you can trust that they're doing good quality work.
Yeah. I think that's, and again, I wouldn't say that any of them are perfect, because, I've had bad days working at the B Corp I work for, and I've had friends leave their company, they're burning me out or whatever. But a lot of times too, it's a smaller company sometimes, or a medium-sized company. And, we've grown to the point now where I only wear one hat, but I used to wear 6 different hats. You're flying around and helping this thing scale. But I think some of that purpose kind of kept me there, because I knew what I was building and I knew who I was building it for and with, in terms of our C-suite. So, but yeah, it ultimately, it gives me, if I'm at the grocery store and I'm debating between this cheese and that cheese, and one of them's Cabot or Tillamook, could I find something? And again, it goes back to this kind of but they're not perfect, but if they went through that assessment, they're probably better than whatever this is. So, yeah. But everybody kind of wants perfection out of everybody and everything now. I wouldn't necessarily say it makes you perfect. We score very high in the workers section because we're a consulting company. Well, that makes sense. But, our environmental section, we never really had a high score in, because we're IT consultants. This is our supply chain. You're talking to me on it. It's a MacBook. So, you're always going to be able to nitpick something. But I would say, yeah, I think it's that, if anything, it breaks through all the noise of certified, made up, whatever certification. by the board of nobody, like it breaks through all that clutter and you're like, oh, B Corp, got it.
Yeah, you bring up a point that I talk about a lot and I've said in multiple different podcasts about if you have two almost identical products and one is a B Corp, for example. Me personally, I'm always going to pick the one that's B Corp just because they do stand out for that reason. And I always give B Corp as one of the examples to look for when you're looking at a brand. Another one would be like 1% for the planet. Like if they're a B Corp and part of 1% for the planet, you can, be damn sure that they're better than this other brand that doesn't have those things. They care about the environment. That's something that I'm passionate about, is the environment and making sure that the companies that I'm supporting understand that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it definitely, and that's the cool part too, is like within the movement, you have all these different, there's a lot of activism right now in the B Corp community around climate change and, Colliers and then there's companies like us where it's, we're very focused on, community impact and what can we do locally and how can we, for us being in the IT industry and being in the South, like how do we help the IT industry actually look like the city of Atlanta or just the state of Georgia or, how do we do the work, upstream that, 10, 15 years, we're actually going to see change. We're not just kind of like, I don't know. I bring it back sometimes like the diversity argument that like you'll see companies in our space and in other spaces, like the entire ecosystem has an issue and they don't fix the issue. They just worry about like their own numbers and like their own demographics. So I think it's cool when you get like a collective group of people together, be it climate change or diversity, equity, inclusion, or whatever that the topic is that they're passionate about it. And then they're working to actually like solve a problem instead of just kind of like throwing their arms up.
Yeah. And that's exactly why I chose to work with impact-driven entrepreneurs like yourself to help people like you and brands and companies like what you've created and other B Corps thrive because they are in it for a purpose. Like it's not just about the profits for them. And that's what I liked about you is you help companies balance the profit with the purpose. And what I teach my clients a lot of times, or not necessarily teach them because everybody I work with basically already understands this, but what I say is once you focus more on your impact and the purpose behind why you're doing something, then the profits follow. But a lot of times if you focus on profits first and that's like your North Star, that's your driving factor, then a few things happen. A lot of times you burn out because you end up not making those profits, or you end up making a lot of money, but then you're not fulfilled because that wasn't actually what you wanted.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually had a conversation about that this morning. We were talking about kind of creating an accelerator of sorts and with a B Corp focus, I guess, or using the assessment, the B impact assessment as a tool to help companies like from the very start baking these things in, start thinking about like, what's my strategy going to be? And kind of almost reverse engineering from what are we trying to do? What's your passion? What's your purpose with this business to what am I going to sell? And I think a lot of accelerators do that backwards where it's like, figure out your path to profitability, your path to cash, do it, and scale. And you want to show this to the venture capital firms and by the time you get to the purpose part, it's too late or you're trying to like retrofit it on and the parts don't match. So not that it can't be done. I think there's some big companies certifying as B Corps now, but chances are they had a lot of that already built into their DNA. They didn't just like stop and pivot on a dime. So yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that and the old adage, I think it was the CEO of yerba mate, Guayaki is the parent company who makes the yellow cans of yerba mate, which I'm now addicted to, the Revel Berry. God, I love that stuff. I mean, I get off the energy drink. Like I used to drink Monsters and like now you're like, no, I like this. Granted, it's like 4 shots of espresso in a can, but
oh boy,
the Chris Mann is their CEO, and he even said he was like, I'm at a conference in Amsterdam, and he's up on stage, and the conversation was going super like, and I don't say this in a bad way, but like tree huggy kind of like it was going super drum circle, and he was like, "Hey guys, just remember," and this guy's got a big like the old school California leftover kind of ponytail, and he's like, "Just remember though, no profit, no purpose." Like if you're not making money at the end of the day, like you don't have a purpose anymore. You can have the best organization you want. So that is the fine line I think that a lot of people are trying to walk. And, having to make tough decisions. Like, do you say no to a deal that you disagree with, ethically, or that maybe you have no problem with, but your employees don't want to do? Like, I've worked with companies like that, like there was one in Atlanta that turned down a deal with like Monsanto. And it was like, but if that's what's valuable to your employees, they're your most valuable asset, then say no to the money, but stick true to your principles, whatever they are. I think, I don't know. Sometimes there's a lot of inauthenticity, if that's a word, lack of authenticity in the world now, where people claim to be for something, and then as soon as it's inconvenient, they no longer care.
Yeah, that's why one of the very first things that I start with in my program when I'm working with clients is having them really define both their personal and professional, for their brand, core values, mission statement, vision statement, and purpose. You have to be extremely clear on those things, as opposed to exactly what you just said. Most people come up with the product or what they're going to do, and then they try to come up with some mission behind it. It's like, no, start with the end in mind and then work towards that. And whatever comes from that, that's what you follow. And I think that's extremely important because I call your mission statement your treasure map, because if you follow that, it leads you to life's ultimate treasure, and you get to decide that, what that is, what fulfills you. And I call your core values your compass directions, because when you follow those, they're going to lead you in the right direction, right? And then once you have both those things, they act as a filter to what you say yes and no to. Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs especially think that they have to do everything at once. A good opportunity presents itself, and I'll say that in air quotes, a good opportunity. Just because it's a good opportunity doesn't mean it's right for you, right? And so having the mission statement, the core values in place can help filter out if it's going to move you towards your purpose, or if it's just going to put more work on your plate and burn you out.
Yeah. And I think that mindset helps scaling businesses, even existing businesses, also define their like niche of like, I had a conversation with another B Corp today, and she's on my board of Be Local Georgia, and we were just catching up, but we were talking about like this opportunity for referrals that kind of came her way. And she's like, but it's not the business that we're good at. It's not the business so we can do it and we'll make, we'll add revenue to the numbers, but the churn I'm probably going to see and the extra workload I'm going to put on people to do the work isn't worth it to us when we want to focus here. So I think having that mindset too, it comes back to like also helping you think about your business more strategically of like, what are we good at? Who is our ideal customer? And that, I mean, so out of the purpose part of that exercise grows kind of your whole vision for your business and what you're trying to do. I mean, I'm the same. Like when I deal with one of the first things I want to get from a client, whether I'm working with my students or I'm working on my own, or we've even done some with the company. I wear a lot of the hats. Is like what is like I have one. It's over here, but it's buried under like books and stuff. But I have one of my clients. It's his vision, mission, vision, values, and it's a card. And they send everybody on day one. And he sent me one before we ever worked together. And I was like, I want to work with this guy. Like I really like that. Shows me they've got there and they're an existing. They've been around for almost 20 years. But he's had like they've had all these B Corp principles baked in. Now he was just very interested in like, okay, I'm ready to like take the step and like solidify it and put the logo on the door, put the logo on the website and let people know what we're all about. Kind of because it is a pretty cool branding tool when you're doing all this stuff to then throw the B Corp logo on and like people, again, like you said earlier, I just get it. Like, So you can say you do all these things, but it's a really nice marketing bundle.
Yeah. Cause, what was that company? Oh man, I'm going to blank on it. Shoot, this is bugging me. But essentially there was a company back in the, I don't know, I think it was 80s or early 90s that had all these core values and said that they were about this, this, and this. And then they went completely against that. And, there's this whole scandal that came out about, fraud and this and that. And it's like, well, it's not, you can't just have the core values in the mission statement. Like you have to actually hire by, reward by, fire by those. Like that is your brand and you have to live that.
Well, same thing. And I think the other part that comes into this too is like I speak a lot about, and I make this argument when I make the B Corp argument too, is like Gen Z calls you out. Like they will call, and don't get me wrong, I have my issues sometimes with like wanting to cancel people immediately, but I think the fact that they have no filter, like I kind of appreciate them for that, because I've literally been at events where somebody's been like, hey, that's cool, you're talking about diversity and inclusion, but I looked at your website and I didn't see any Black employees, and they're like, you see the CEO with this like shocked look, like not expecting to get called out for that. But then I've seen that same company turn it around and like, okay, let's figure out our solution here, because you can't, you're just gonna in 2021 you're gonna get called out, and I am a firm believer the first people that will call you out are your employees. And people are like, well, employees are always afraid to speak up. Hate to tell you, there's a million more jobs than there are job seekers right now. And your employer isn't going to speak up, or your employee isn't going to speak up. He's going to give you his 2 weeks notice and he's going to move on down the road. So like, that's where I think that disconnect, like there's no more of a like toe the company line. Like I have an old sales book and chapter 1 is recognizing your debt to the company. Like that's done.
Oh my gosh.
That's great. I found it at a estate sale, but 1936, I think this Principles of Salesmanship or something. It's back there. But yeah, like man, those days are over.
Changed. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but the other part is we're, our generation, I'm an upper cusp or whatever, an old millennial. The people still talk about millennials like we're like 19. I'm like, no, we are all like, we have like kids and mortgages. And so I'm almost 40, but we also, that era of like my grandpa working at the same sugar factory in Bay City, Michigan for 40 years until like he retired. Like,
yeah,
we saw our parents get laid off. We went through the Great Recession. We went through the .com bubble. Like we saw it all. And then Gen Z saw their parents getting laid off, in the Great Recession, and saw like this like stagnant economy for 3 or 4 years, trying to figure out like what happened. And so they're just not going to put up with it. Like they're smart enough to be selfish and to put and I tell my students this, I tell people I work with that I mentor this, like put your career first. Always work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Otherwise you're I don't want to use the term dumb because that might be too strong, but I advise against it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's why the Captain's Lifestyle Program's purpose statement is leading the future of business, for the exact reason you just mentioned. Like entrepreneurs and CEOs of the future, they have to, essentially just be good people. They have to first and foremost care about themselves, their physical health, happiness, and productivity in order to lead a successful business. Then they have to care about the health and well-being of their employees, mental and physical health as well, because healthy, happy employees produce productive work. And then they also have to care about their impact on the community that they affect and their environment. I think that all of those have to be in place in order to create a lasting, successful company. There's, of course, going to be companies that pop up who maybe don't follow any of those, but they're sure as hell not going to be in business 20 years from now. I can guarantee you that.
I mean, you're seeing, everybody, whatever you want to call it, the great resignation, but I'm like, all it is people like going through a really stressful year, reevaluating like what's important to them. And the people that took care of their employees last year aren't seeing any real, like we didn't lay off anybody. We didn't furlough anybody. Our C-suite made the decision, we're just not going to make much money this year. We might not make any, but we're going to pay our bills. We're going to keep everybody in place. And when the economy comes back, guess what? We're fully staffed and we're a consulting company. All of a sudden, February, man, deals coming in. And we're like, oh, this is nice. You're on that project and you're on that project. We weren't like, and we still needed to hire, but we weren't operating a skeleton crew. And our people recognize that. They're like, we scraped some nickels together to pay out some sort of a bonus last year when like, hey, we don't have that's usually out of the profit margin. We didn't have one last year. But we also didn't lay you off. We didn't furlough you. We took care of people if like we found out like their spouse or partner had been laid off. Like we just did business the right way and we've been rewarded for it. And I think that's good. And I think that brings me to like one of my favorite parts of having B Corp conversations too, though. They're like, it's okay. It's okay to make money. Like it's okay to have like purpose and profit. Like I think sometimes people get afraid of like, if I have a purpose, and I know it's true in the nonprofit world, if I have a purpose, like, should I be making money? Like, should I, like, I was met with a guy who owns an outdoor outfitter up in Clayton, Georgia, Wander, North Georgia. And they just are going through the certification. They're submitted. They're waiting for their audit. And he was like, he's like, don't get me wrong. I want a lake house. is I just don't want it yet. Like I need to get I've got part-time employees that don't have healthcare. I want to get them healthcare. Like if I'm going to pool up and accrue some money, like the lake house can come when I'm 60 years old. But like right now, I want to make sure that my people are taken care of. I want to make sure that my people are happy, that, that everybody has a good experience, including, the community we operate in, my people. And I think that's brilliant that like, but he is also like, like I do want to make money. I do want I do want an RV, like to travel around. Like it's okay to make money. It's fine. And it comes with purpose, but you can do it without like stepping on, necks to do it, or feeling slimy, or stabbing people in the back, or,
I believe that's the only way to do it, because you can technically, be super wealthy by just being a dick, by just being an asshole. But I don't think that you can truly enjoy that wealth, because I don't think you can be happy if you do it that way. If you don't care about your impact to the environment or other people, I don't think that you're truly happy. And especially if you do it by just working yourself to the ground and neglecting your relationships, then what the fuck is the point of making all that money in the first place? So by focusing on the purpose and just being a good person and helping out everybody else, that's how you create true wealth and true fulfillment.
Yeah. And creating, boundaries for yourself. Like I worked with a business coach this year. It's an old friend of mine. She was like my first introduction to B Corp. She did her MBA at Georgia. Like she graduated like 2 years before I started, but she had worked on a B Corp project. And so she was kind of our subject matter expert. And then we've taken it and really run with it. But she worked with me on saying no. I'm like, it was worth every penny I paid her. Like she wasn't that expensive, but I invested a good bit of money, and people are like, how was the program? Because it was kind of a little accelerator, and I had started the LLC, and I'm like, man, it was worth every penny though. Like just that lesson of learning to say no, that like, it's like, you will get the social burnout, like trying to be the nice guy, trying to, to serve everybody. Like if you're not serving yourself and taking care of yourself and getting sleep, if you're doing all these things for other people at the expense of yourself, like you're going to burn out. You're not going to be able to serve people well. And like, you're going to fall behind on promises. You're going to fall behind on obligations. And like, you're stealing that time. And this was the point that got it for me. I was just recently married guy. Like, she's like, you're stealing that time from your wife. You're stealing like my family retired up here, and my sister came up, and the kids are here now. Like, I'm stealing that time from my niece and nephew, from my sister, from my parents, from my wife, from my dogs, from my friends. Like that time's coming from somewhere, or I'm stealing it for my own sanity. So, it's okay to say no. It's hard when you have like the heart and you want to serve and you want to help. And I do believe in putting some value out in the world and not really expecting anything in return, but just being able to like have boundaries, and like, I don't have to meet with you tomorrow. I can meet with you in a month. And if they really want to meet with you, they will.
It's a superpower to say no. And what you just described is the exact reason why I have a business, for literally that exact reason. Like you can't pour from an empty cup. The old entrepreneurial mindset of just hustle, grind, work nonstop. Like you cannot do that. In order to be actually successful and fulfilled with what you've created and enjoy your life, you have to prioritize yourself first. And that's not selfish, and this is why I work with impact-driven entrepreneurs, because by prioritizing themselves, by making them look the best, feel the best, perform at their best, they then go on and make a greater impact. And that's the only way to do it. Same thing with money. Like you have to have money to make a bigger impact, right? You have to be feeling good in order for you to make that money to make a bigger impact, right?
Yeah. And it's okay to scale that business. And like, cause then for me, I get to like, if I have a 1% budget for pro bono work, and I have a 1% of our revenue budget for volunteer time. So if we go from 15 million to 20 million, guess what my budget just did? Went up by 25%. So now I got 1,300 hours to give away this year. So like that's the cool part of it. But yeah, even going back to like, everybody thinks our CEO, and don't get me wrong, he loves to wear his rise and grind shirt, but like everybody thinks like, man, he's a machine. And I've gotten to know him because I worked on his B Corp certification during my MBA. So now I've known him since our first meeting was January 16. So like 5.5 years. And he goes to bed. Like, yeah, he gets up at like 4 a.m. and like, you'll get a text back from him at 4 or a Slack note back at like, and then he goes and he works out and he's in the office by 7. And if you try to like schedule a meeting with him at like 4:30, his brain's done. Like he's checked out. But he goes home, he has dinner with the family, and he'll answer the phone. Like if I call him at 6, he knows something's up. But at 9:30, he goes to bed. Like I know he doesn't even sleep with a cell phone in the same room. So everybody he has that perception, I think. But he started to like talk about this a little bit more, and that's why I know it's cool that I'm sharing the story. But like the focus on mental health and physical health and kind of like spiritual health, I think has been a good thing because we've stopped pretending to be superheroes. And we started pretending to be real. Like we started to be vulnerable. Like I onboard people and I tell them about using sick time for mental health days. And I tell them about the time I took one when I woke up and I just couldn't. I was burned out. And I told our CEO, like, I gotta check out. And he's like, why don't you just take this week off and we'll get back and we'll cover for you. Mm-hmm. And like that kind of stuff where it wasn't like versus back in the day where they'd be like, Nathan's soft, so weak. And there's that, especially like for men, I think there's that.
Oh yeah.
There's that kind of like
that stigma
shows that like I haven't, like when people tell you they're like, oh, I might have gotten 4 hours of sleep this week. Like, unless you have a newborn, like that's terrible.
You're literally bragging about making yourself stupid, weak, and unproductive. That's what you're bragging about.
And shortening your lifespan.
Exactly. So that's awesome. And it sounds like the CEO really gets it, which is awesome. That's why our mission statement is helping impact-driven entrepreneurs achieve balance, because it is about the hustle and grind as long as you do it properly by prioritizing yourself. So helping impact-driven entrepreneurs achieve balance and accelerate growth. You can only do that when you're properly balanced. So yeah.
And figuring out ways to like, I don't want to say, I heard it was a podcast or somebody, and he was talking, or maybe it was a book. I don't know. I like multitask. Like this morning, I was listening to an audiobook while I was walking around with a trash grabber and a bag at like 7 a.m. Mm-hmm. But I'm getting my exercise. I'm getting my volunteering in, and I'm listening. I'm getting my reading done.
Yep.
But I was listening, and somebody said buy time, like wherever you can, if you can afford to. And I mean, I guess I count myself lucky that and I've worked hard, and good things do come to those that put a lot of effort into things, but. Like if you get the opportunity, like if you enjoy spending 2 hours or 3 hours on a Saturday writing blogs or working on a book or something, and you can afford to spend like $80 to have your lawn mowed, like you start making those equations in your head where like, or we can go out to dinner on Friday night instead of doing something that I don't want to do. Like, I mean, he was like, man, take your laundry, get a laundry service, get your lawn mowed, like all these things. He's like, you can't make up more time. And so you reach a certain point where it's like, buy experiences and buy time where you can. And that's just stuck with me. And like, as this year's progressed, especially once you get into consulting, you're billing by the hour, you're doing a simple math equation in your head of like, this isn't worth it for me. I hate mowing the lawn. I like it for about 2 mows in the spring when you're excited to get out of the house. I'm like, this is
I'm a huge fan of outsourcing for literally that exact reason. Like if you can hire somebody to do it, do it. Have you read 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss?
I haven't, but you're like the straw that breaks the camel's back, because I just worked.
You've heard it so many times. Yeah.
That was just, and that's his goal. Like that's his goal for his team, which is brilliant to me. Like he's like, I want my people working from anywhere. I want them to be able to work and make decisions from this. I want people to be able to take Fridays off and just work 4-day weeks. He goes, I don't know if we'll get it to 4 hours, but so he's kind of been and I'm like, all right, let's put it on the list.
Yeah, it's talking about that exact same thing. Just obviously goes into way more detail. Right there. Good one. Okay, so let's get back to B Corp. We kind of took a little tangent there, but why do you think so many companies now are going towards the B Corp certification?
Honestly, I think, and I'm not against talking ROI, because again, I think it's an okay conversation to have. And I think there should be a conversation, but I think the ROI is getting more demonstrable. Like I think, especially in the B2C space, like when you're grocery shop, like you're starting to get consumer attention. And I think B Corps are doing a better job of like
advertising what it means.
Yeah, putting it on. Like, I mean, if you buy a thing like Danone North America or Danone or whatever, Danone's the whatever. Danone North America, Danone Silk Milk. If you buy a thing of Silk Milk right now, on the side is just a giant B Corp thing and why they certified. So I think they're starting to see like some, I could probably do some napkin math. I actually have a project this semester in my class, and I have a guy who used to be an actuary, and then I have a finance MBA, and they're working on this project to help a risk management company determine the ROI on their B Corp certification, because they have the points already. They just haven't done anything with it. They haven't submitted. So I think people are starting to see it. It creates a lot of content. And not only does it create a lot of content for a marketing team or for me and kind of like, some of the employer branding stuff we do, but it resonates. Like you've got millennials who kind of, I think, and I'll say this as somebody who's been in the working world since 2004, like we were kind of afraid to speak up because we kind of had like our parents chirping in our ear to like, hey, be grateful you have that job, or like tell them you'll do anything to get your foot in the door. And like, so like, even if we didn't like it sometimes, and maybe this is just me that I don't like awkward conversations and I don't like delivering bad news. But I think we just kind of like, we should be doing more. Like I should be doing more. This company I shouldn't hate going to work. And then Gen Z shows up and they're just like, nope, not having any of it. And I think they've empowered us now to be like, yeah, that's right. What they said. We're like that guy in the fight, like from like behind, like, hold me back. So I think there's a big part of that's going into it too. It's a generational shift, because I have to have that conversation a lot more with I don't even want to say a boomer, probably an older Gen X, that's probably in the C-suite right now that is still kind of like, and it's, I was writing a blog post yesterday, and I think I wrote, just because you had a shitty job back in the early 90s when you started doesn't mean that a 23-year-old now is willing to take one. Mm-hmm. Like it's changed, and it's like you're either gonna, and you said it earlier, like in 15, 20 years, I don't think if these companies don't adapt, I don't think they'll get there. And then not that they won't get there, they won't be there in 20 years. And then I think the other piece too is I think companies, this is why I'm always like, I'll be a podcast. Like I'm paying for a Podmatch account there's no return on this investment for me other than I just jump on, I put my B Corp shirt on and I proselytize about B Corps. But to me, it's such a valuable tool to improve your business because you can't measure or you can't change or improve what you're not measuring. So going through that assessment and thinking about, we used to kind of shrug our shoulders and be like, well, it's IT. It's just a bunch of like middle-aged white dudes. Like it's what we do. And then it's like, okay, let's put a number around there. Like, okay, shit, we're 73%. Just like, well, like we had no strategy, like, but we cared and we championed, but it's like, what are we doing? Like, where are the women at? Like, why are we not getting female applications? What's our job post say? It helps you, like, once you quantify something, you set a goal, now I can create a strategy and I can, give myself kind of like quarterly objectives that I'm reporting to the CEO on. And here's what we're doing here. Like, what percentage of your team volunteered last year? Most people are not going to be able to answer that. I can tell you it was 24%. And my goal was 75%. COVID hit, took a lot of volunteer opportunities. So what was my goal this year? 75% again, we're going to do it. And I think right now we're at like 54%. So I'm probably going to get there by the end of the year. But if you're not measuring stuff, you don't really know. And I think that just going through that assessment, whether you certify or not, it's a free tool. Like just go through it and just see what you're like. Define your current state. Where do you want to be? Now define current state and figure out what do we need to do to get there. And it might not all be possible, but again, you're not getting 500 miles if you don't drive the first 5. So that to me is the biggest. I think that's one of the things companies are starting to see is like, oh, things we didn't think about, like things we thought we cared about and we talk about that we're not very good at. We're not walking the walk.
Boom. Let's leave it there. So tell us where we can find more about you and how you can help companies achieve that. Yeah.
So it's funny. So I have profitable, I can't even say it. And I don't say I regret this name, but Profitable Purpose Consulting. At least they're 3 easy words to spell. If you can't spell them, then we're probably not meant to do business together anyway.
Right.
So, but I have that as my LLC. And then honestly, like LinkedIn/Nathan A. Stuck is probably the easiest way because it depending on the company, depending on whether they have a budget, depending on how fast they want to move. I'm also, I have them in my class at UGA. We're running 6 projects this semester. I've been working with Emory University, and we've got a little like proof of concept, whatever you want to call it, MVP going there with 2 projects. So I've got 2 companies going through that one. And I'm working with another gentleman in Atlanta where we're trying to get into the HBCUs and run some program projects. So long story short, I might have students to throw at this. I might have a university who wants a project, but let's talk about what, and we did it ourselves, kind of, I guess. We used students, but we didn't know what we were doing because we reinvented the wheel. We were writing a handbook from scratch. Google it. Those things are already out there. Just control F replace. So yeah, I would say just reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to answer questions and help you figure out, is it a fit or is it right now? Should we just go through the assessment? But let's, you're going through some sort of weird, rebrand or something. Maybe it doesn't make sense, but yeah, happy to always entertain those conversations and see where we can plug you in. And I've got a network across the country too. I've got a consultant that helps with female owned organizations. That's kind of her niche in the B Corp consulting world. So chances are I can help you connect with somebody, or even if you just have a question, you're like, well, we're a brewery. Well, let me connect you with Creature Comforts or Allagash or all these people that I've, that's the one thing I will lose sleep over. I love networking, love meeting people.
Oh yeah. Yeah, me too. That's why I love this podcast. The amount of connections and relationships I build is amazing. And the fact that I've already, hooked people up, people being on the podcast and then having somebody else on the show and wow, you'd be perfect for this person. And just, if nothing comes from it for me, that's totally fine. It's just the concept of being a good person, no matter what, giving without the intent to receive. So even if you don't have the B Corp certification, that doesn't mean you can be a bad company, just always do the right thing, no matter what.
And people are getting better with their spidey sense around those things.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think genuine people come across as genuine, and, giving I'll get on calls with people, hey, I'll get a message on LinkedIn, hey, would love it. And depending on what my schedule looks like, or, hey, can we meet in 2 weeks when I come up for air? But I'll get on that call sometimes and you're there for 30 minutes. And you're like, I don't really. And then all of a sudden that light bulb comes on. I'm who you need to meet is this person. But then a year later, you'll be like, oh my God, that person I had that one call with that nothing really was I don't know why I'm even on this call. Mm-hmm. And you're like, but I just met somebody else who needs to meet them.
Yep.
And I think you're adding value to, and again, always work harder on yourself than you do on your job. You're adding value to your own personal brand too, though, because you're that person that they think of you're the super connector and these people and but you're also just they know that you're trying to do the right thing and that you're willing to spend a little bit of time to help them find success or whatever that looks like. Yeah. It's my favorite moment when you're able to make that connection of you need to talk to this person. You're just nailed it. And then you're one of these days I have to figure out how to monetize that. But for the time being, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. And to everybody listening, everything that Nathan and I talked about will be in the show notes. So you can check it out there, head over to his LinkedIn, connect with him. Clearly, if he's saying connect with me, he wants to connect with you, build connections and relationships. That's what life, let alone business, is all about. Network is your net worth. So,
yep.
Nathan, thank you so much for coming on the show and just being a good dude.
Awesome, Taylor, man. I really appreciate it. This is fun. Again, sorry I didn't wear the captain's hat, but yeah, you're the captain. So
next time.
Yeah, seriously. Thank you. Always happy to talk B Corps. Always grateful for the platform and the opportunity to talk about, I don't know, just us becoming a better society with businesses leading the way.
Let's do it. Leading the future of business.